People will believe anything if you pour it into a glass with enough sugar and lies. I didn't expect that one of those lies would bring the city's most famous basketball star crashing into my life, thirsty not just for my so-called miracle cocktail, but for something far more dangerous. The first time I saw him, it wasn't on TV or in a stadium. It was in my bar, standing at the far end of the counter like he was just another guy running from the weight of the world. But he wasn't just another guy. He was Marcus Kane, the 6'6" legend who could make an arena scream with nothing more than the flick of his wrist and a perfect three-pointer. And yet, that night, under the dim light of my bar, he didn't look like a god. He looked broken. "Give me something strong," he muttered, his voice low, raw. I should have handed him a regular bourbon, something simple and forgettable. Instead, I reached for the cocktail I'd been pushing around town as a joke. My so-called miracle elixir, a blend of spices, citrus, and one secret ingredient I'd guarded like my life depended on it. It wasn't magic. It wasn't going to cure heartbreak or erase pain. But people wanted to believe in something. And in this city, belief sells better than truth. I slid the glass across to him. He raised an eyebrow, studying the shimmering golden liquid. "What is this?" "Salvation," I said dryly. He chuckled. Just once, a small sound that didn't fit the heaviness in his eyes. And then he drank. That was the beginning. I didn't know it then, but Marcus Kane would come back the next night. And the night after that. And every night after, until my little invention wasn't just a cocktail anymore. It was an addiction. And somehow so was I. I've always been good at selling stories. That's what bartending really is. Selling people a moment, a taste, a version of themselves they want to believe exists. My bar wasn't much to look at. A cracked neon sign outside, a jukebox that only worked when it felt like it, and stools that squeaked with every movement. But inside, under the low amber lights, people forgot. They let me take their memories and twist them into something softer. Marcus was different, though. He didn't want to forget. He wanted to feel. He wanted to drink something that burned, something that told him he was still alive after the world had turned him into a commodity. "Another round," he said one night, his jaw set, sweat dripping down his temple like he'd just come from practice. "You know this isn't real medicine?" I reminded him, pouring anyway. "Doesn't matter," he said, his eyes locked on mine. "It works." I wanted to laugh, to tell him that what he felt was just citrus oil and chilly heat tricking his nerves. But the truth was, I'd started noticing something too. When he drank it, the world around us shifted. The air got heavier, the distance between us thinner. Maybe the cocktail wasn't magic, but something in the way he looked at me was. The city noticed. Paparazzi started lingering around the block, snapping photos of Marcus leaving my bar at ungodly hours. Sports journalists whispered about his new ritual, the mysterious drink he couldn't go a day without. And me? I should have been thrilled. My bar was packed, every stool filled with people demanding the miracle elixir. My tip jar overflowed. But every time Marcus walked in, all I saw was a man unraveling, one sip at a time. "Why do you keep coming back here?" I asked him once, late at night, when the bar had emptied and it was just the two of us. He leaned across the counter, his face close enough that I could smell the faint salt of sweat and the sweetness of citrus still clinging to his lips. "Because you're the only thing that feels real anymore." My chest tightened. Nobody had ever said something like that to me. Not without expectation, not without wanting something in return. And yet, here was Marcus Kane, the man who had everything, sitting in my crumbling bar, looking at me like I was the cure. And that terrified me. It didn't take long for the storm to hit. The team managers got wind of his new obsession. Reporters started calling me a witch doctor bartender, accusing me of drugging him, of manipulating his career. One headline read, "The fall of Marcus Kane, is a cocktail to blame?" I laughed when I first saw it. Then I saw the look on Marcus's face. The exhaustion, the shame, the way his hands trembled when he held the glass now, like he was afraid even the comfort he'd found here was slipping away. "They think I'm weak," he said one night, his voice breaking in a way I'd never heard before. "They think I'm throwing everything away." "You're not weak," I told him, my voice firmer than I felt. "You're human. That's the part they don't see." But the truth was I was falling too. Falling into something I hadn't signed up for. Falling into him. The first time he kissed me, it wasn't soft. It wasn't sweet. It was desperate. The bar was dark, empty. The only sound the hum of the refrigerator in the back. He leaned across the counter like he always did. But this time his hand caught the back of my neck, pulling me forward. His lips pressed against mine, tasting of lime and smoke, and for a moment the whole world went silent. I should have pulled away. I should have told him this was a mistake, that he didn't really want me. He wanted the feeling, the escape, the illusion I'd built for him in a glass. But I didn't. Kissed him back. And in that kiss, I tasted everything I'd been trying to bury. My loneliness, my fear, my hunger for something real. He wasn't just addicted to my cocktail. He was addicted to me, and I was starting to realize I might be addicted to him too. But nothing stays hidden forever. One night, as rain hammered the city streets and the neon sign outside flickered like it was about to die, Marcus showed up looking worse than I'd ever seen him. His hood was pulled low, his shoulders tense, his eyes bloodshot. "They gave me an ultimatum," he said, slamming his fist against the counter hard enough to rattle the glasses. "Drop the drink. Drop you or lose everything." My stomach dropped. I tried to speak, but the words tangled in my throat. "Tell me it's not real," he begged, his voice raw. "Tell me it's just a drink, and I'll walk away." I looked at him, at the man who'd come into my life like a storm and wrecked every wall I'd built around myself, and I couldn't lie. "It's just a drink," I said quietly. "But what's between us that's real?" He closed his eyes, his chest rising and falling like he was standing at the edge of a cliff. And then, without another word, he turned and walked out into the rain. And I didn't see him for weeks. Those weeks were hell. The bar emptied almost overnight, the hype gone now that Marcus had disappeared from the headlines. The paparazzi stopped calling. The tips dried up. And me? I went back to pouring cheap bourbon and listening to strangers cry about their lives. But nothing tasted the same. Nothing felt the same. Every night, I caught myself glancing at the door, half hoping, half dreading that he'd walk back in. And every night, the door stayed closed. Until one night when it finally opened. He stood there, drenched in sweat, his jersey clinging to him like he'd just come from the game of his life. His chest heaved, his eyes wild, but when he looked at me, there was no shame, no desperation, just determination. "I don't care what they say," he said, his voice steady. "I don't care what I lose. I need you." And just like that, the walls I'd built crumbled for good. The night Marcus came back, I realized something terrifying. I had been waiting for him. It didn't matter that he had broken me with his silence, that he had walked away into the rain weeks before without a single backward glance. My heart betrayed me the moment the door creaked open and his silhouette appeared against the storm outside. He stepped closer, each footfall echoing against the empty bar. My hands shook, but I didn't move, couldn't. "You shouldn't be here," I whispered, though my voice sounded more like a plea than a warning. "Then why does it feel like this is the only place I belong?" His words cut through me, sharp and merciless. For a long moment, neither of us moved. His chest heaved, his breath shallow, his gaze locked on mine with a kind of hunger that wasn't about cocktails or illusions. It was about me. About us. And I didn't know if I was strong enough to stop it. He collapsed onto the barstool like he was carrying the weight of the entire world. Maybe he was. Fame had a way of chaining people, dragging them down until they forgot they were human. "I lost the game tonight," he said, his voice low, almost bitter. "The press is calling me a disgrace. My team doesn't trust me anymore. And all I could think about was this place. You." I swallowed hard. "Marcus." "No." He cut me off, his hands slamming against the counter. "Don't push me away. Not now. I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of living the life they want me to live. When I'm here, when I'm with you, I feel free." His words hung in the air, heavy and electric. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But I also knew the cost of that freedom. "You don't understand what you're asking," I said softly. "If you stay, if you choose me, you'll lose everything you've built." He leaned forward, his eyes blazing with something I'd never seen before. Defiance, desperation, devotion. "Then let me lose it, because none of it matters if I can't have this. If I can't have you." The kiss that followed was nothing like the first. It wasn't desperate or reckless or born from alcohol. It was deliberate, solid, a choice. His lips crashed against mine, strong and certain, pulling me across the counter like he was claiming me. I gave in, every part of me burning with the weight of his touch. His hands tangled in my hair, mine clutched at his soaked shirt, and the world outside ceased to exist. For the first time in years, I wasn't a bartender spinning stories for strangers. I wasn't the man who hid behind sarcasm and cocktails. I was just me, and someone saw me. But as much as I wanted to stay in that moment, I knew reality wouldn't wait. It never does. The fallout came faster than either of us expected. Photos leaked, grainy images of Marcus leaving my bar, my face barely visible beside him. The headlines were brutal. Marcus Kane's secret romance? The bartender behind the scandal. Calls came to my phone at all hours. Reporters banged on the bar's windows, shouting questions I didn't want to answer. Customers stopped showing up, too afraid of being caught in the chaos. And Marcus? He was drowning in it. The team benched him for his own good. Sponsors pulled out, demanding he explain himself. Everywhere he turned, someone was ready to tear him apart. One night, he showed up at my apartment instead of the bar. His hoodie was pulled low, but his shoulders sagged under the weight of the world. "I can't keep doing this to you," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm destroying your life." "You're not," I argued, though my chest ached with the truth. "They are. The world is. I don't care what happens to me," he said, tears glistening in his eyes. "But I can't stand watching them rip you apart because of me." My hands trembled as I reached for him, cupping his face like he might disappear if I let go. "Marcus, listen to me. They don't get to decide who you are. They don't get to decide who we are." For the first time in weeks, he smiled. A small, broken smile, but real. "You still want this? After everything?" "I never stopped," I whispered. And with that, we made a silent promise. We would weather the storm together, no matter how brutal it became. But love doesn't erase fear. The whispers grew louder. Threats came in the mail. "Stay away from him. You're ruining his career." One evening, I found Marcus waiting for me outside the bar, pacing like a caged animal. When he saw me, he grabbed my hand, his grip so tight it almost hurt. "They want me to make a statement tomorrow," he said, his voice ragged. "They want me to say you don't matter, that it was nothing, that you're nothing." The words stabbed deep, though I knew he didn't mean them. "What are you going to do?" I asked, my voice barely audible. He looked at me then, and in his eyes, I saw the war he was fighting. The boy who had grown up chasing basketballs in cracked driveways, and the man chained by a machine that demanded perfection. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I know I can't lose you." And in that moment, I realized the truth I'd been running from. I couldn't lose him either. We hid in the shadows for weeks after that, clinging to stolen moments. Late-night walks down empty streets, whispered conversations in the quiet of my apartment, touches that burned but had to stay secret. It wasn't enough. Love like ours was never meant to be hidden. One night, Marcus pulled me into his arms, holding me so tight it almost hurt. His voice was steady, but his hands shook. "I can't keep living like this," he confessed. "I can't keep pretending you're just some bartender who poured me a drink. You're more than that. You're everything." My throat closed. "Marcus, I want the world to know," he said firmly. "Even if it costs me everything. I'd rather lose the game than lose you." And for the first time, I believed him. The press conference was brutal. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted, microphones shoved in his face. Marcus stood at the podium, tall and unflinching, but I could see the storm in his eyes. "This isn't about basketball," he began, his voice carrying across the crowded room. "This isn't about rumors. This is about truth. The truth is I've been in love. With someone who makes me feel alive. Someone who sees me as more than a player, more than a brand. He's not a scandal. He's not a mistake. He's my choice." The room exploded with chaos. Reporters yelled questions, cameras clicked like gunfire, and somewhere in the back, I stood frozen, my heart pounding in my chest. He looked at me then. Across the sea of flashing lights, his eyes found mine, and in that moment, the noise faded. There was only him, only us. That night, when he finally made it back to me, he was shaking. "They're going to crucify me," he whispered, collapsing onto my couch. "The team, the sponsors, they'll all walk away." "Then let them," I said, sinking down beside him. "Because I'm not going anywhere." His eyes searched mine, desperate, afraid, but also filled with something fierce, hope. "You're really not going to leave me, are you?" he asked, his voice trembling. I pressed my forehead to his, closing the space between us. "Not even if the whole world burns." And for the first time in a long time, he believed it. The morning after Marcus's press conference, the city felt different. It wasn't the streets. Those were still filled with honking cars and impatient pedestrians. It wasn't the skyline, that still glittered with its false promise of dreams. No, it was me. I felt different, like I was walking through the world without armor for the first time, exposed and raw. Because Marcus had said it out loud, to the whole world. He had chosen me in front of cameras, reporters, fans. He had made me more than a rumor, more than a secret. And in doing so, he had painted a target on both of us. The backlash came fast, like a storm tearing through everything in its path. On TV, sports analysts dissected his every word, twisting them into weapons. "Marcus Kane is distracted," one said. "He's throwing his career away for some bartender." Fans who had once chanted his name in packed arenas now held signs with words like betrayer and quitter. Social media turned into a battlefield, half defending him with desperate loyalty, the other half demanding his downfall. And me? I became the villain, the parasite, the poison. They called me a manipulator, a fraud, a nobody who had latched onto a star and dragged him down. My bar, once filled with curious customers chasing the thrill of the miracle elixir, was now deserted. Some nights, I sat in the dim light staring at the door, half hoping someone would walk in, half dreading they actually would. It wasn't just strangers, either. My landlord left a note under my door telling me, "This isn't the kind of attention our building wants." Someone spray-painted "slut" on the bar's window. The city that once ignored me suddenly knew my name, and they wanted me gone. Marcus saw it. He saw the exhaustion in my face, the way my hands shook when I tried to make coffee in the mornings, the hollowness in my eyes after reading one too many hate-filled messages. "This is my fault," he said one night, his voice low as he sat at my kitchen table, still in his sweat-soaked practice gear. "I dragged you into this. I should have kept you safe." I slammed the mug down harder than I meant to, coffee sloshing over the rim. "Safe? You think I wanted safe, Marcus? You think I wanted to live hiding behind shadows, pretending what we have is some dirty secret?" His jaw tightened, his hands balling into fists on the table. "I just wanted to protect you." "Well, newsflash," I snapped, my voice breaking. "You can't. Not from this. Not from them. The only thing you can do is decide if we're worth fighting for. If I'm worth it." Silence hung heavy between us. His eyes softened, and for the first time he looked small. Not the giant on the court, not the man who made arenas scream. Just Marcus, a man terrified of losing the only thing that felt real. "You're worth everything," he whispered finally. And though the world outside burned, that night we clung to each other like we were the only survivors of a war. But wars don't end with one declaration. The league summoned him to a closed-door meeting. Reporters swarmed outside, speculating if this would be the end of his career. When he returned to me, his face was pale, his body stiff like stone. "They want me to sign a contract," he said, tossing a thick folder onto my table. "A morality clause. Basically says I can play as long as I agree to cut ties." My heart stopped. Cut ties? He met my eyes, his own rimmed red. "With you." The room spun. My knees went weak, and I had to grip the edge of the counter to stay upright. They weren't just asking him to hide. They were asking him to erase me. "What did you say?" I whispered. His voice cracked. I walked out. Tears blurred my vision, but I blinked them away, forcing myself to breathe. "Marcus, if you do this, if you fight them, you might lose everything. The team, the career, the future you've worked your whole life for." He stepped forward, his hands cupping my face like he was anchoring himself. "Then let me lose it, because none of that means anything without you." And God help me, I believed him. Still, believing didn't stop the fear. Nights grew long, restless. Marcus became a ghost of himself. Tired, beaten down by the constant attacks, the whispers, the headlines. I wanted to take his pain, to carry it myself, but all I could do was watch him unravel. One night, I found him sitting on the fire escape outside my apartment, staring at the city below, his shoulders slumped, his eyes hollow. "They were right about one thing," he murmured without looking at me. "Your drink really is addictive, just not the way they think." I sat beside him, the cold metal biting into my skin. "Addiction destroys people. What we have, it saves me." He turned then, his eyes shining with something fierce. "It saves me too." And we kissed under the stars, fragile and desperate, clinging to the only truth that still belonged to us. Then came the night everything cracked. The team officially suspended Marcus indefinitely. Sponsors withdrew. His agent dropped him. Overnight, the man who had been the face of basketball was labeled toxic, a liability. He showed up at my bar, drunk for the first time, not on my cocktail but on cheap whiskey. His movements were sloppy, his words slurred. "Maybe they're right," he spat bitterly, knocking over an empty glass. "Maybe I ruined everything." I grabbed his shoulders, shaking him. "Don't you dare say that. Don't you dare let them make you believe their lies. You're more than their trophies. You're more than their expectations. You're Marcus Kane. And you're mine." His gaze locked on mine, wild and broken. "Yours," he repeated, like the word was the only rope keeping him from falling. That night, he stayed with me, curled against my chest like a child, trembling from the weight of it all. and I held him, whispering over and over that we would survive this, that love was stronger than hate, that they couldn't take us apart unless we let them. But the truth? I wasn't sure if I believed it myself. There's a silence that's worse than shouting. It's the silence that fills a room after the headlines fade, after the cameras stop flashing, after the last hateful comment has been posted. It's the silence Marcus and I sat in now, our backs against the peeling brick wall of my empty bar. He was spinning a basketball slowly between his palms, not even looking at it. The sound of rubber against his skin was the only rhythm left. "I can't remember the last time I actually played," he murmured finally. His voice was hoarse, cracked, like really played, not for cameras, not for crowds, just played. "You can still play," I said softly. "You just need a court, a ball, yourself." He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that was more memory than reality. "Myself. Yeah. Feels like I lost that somewhere along the way." I wanted to tell him he hadn't lost himself, that he was still in there, buried under the noise. But all I could do was reach out, lay my hand over his. The ball stopped spinning. His fingers threaded through mine. "You haven't lost you," I whispered. "And you haven't lost me either." That night, we went to a rooftop court a few blocks away, one of those forgotten places where the chain-link fences were rusted and the paint had long since faded. It was empty at midnight, the city buzzing below us like a living thing. Marcus dribbled once, twice, then tossed the ball at the hoop, clanged off the rim and rolled back to him. He laughed. A real laugh this time, sharp and self-deprecating. "Guess I'm rusty. You're human," I said. He threw again. This time it went in, the sound of the swish echoing across the rooftop. He closed his eyes and breathed out, like that one perfect shot had reminded him who he was. Then he turned to me, sweat glistening on his forehead, eyes bright in the city light. "Come here," he said. I walked toward him, my heart hammering. He reached out, took my hands, and pulled me into the center of the court. "This is the only place I ever felt like I belonged," he said quietly. "But with you," his voice cracked. "With you, it feels bigger than this. It feels like maybe I can be more than what they say I am." My chest ached. "You already are." He cupped my face, his thumb brushing my cheek. "Then stay. Stay with me. No more hiding. No more running." The city roared beneath us. The wind whipped around us. And then, in the middle of that rooftop court, he kissed me. Slow and steady. A kiss not of desperation but of building something new. The world didn't magically forgive him. Sponsors didn't come running back. The league still kept him benched. But something changed inside Marcus after that night. He started showing up at community courts around the city, not as Marcus Kane the star, but as Marcus Kane the guy who loved basketball. He played with kids, coached pickup games, laughed with strangers. Photos surfaced online of him kneeling to tie a kid's shoe, handing out free gear, teaching jump shots. And for the first time since the scandal began, the headlines weren't cruel. They were curious. Marcus Kane finds himself on the streets. From arenas to asphalt, the rebirth of a player. I watched from the sidelines, my heart swelling with a mix of pride and fear. Pride because he was finding a way back to himself. Fear because the world that had chewed us up once might do it again. One evening, after a day spent at a youth clinic, Marcus came to my bar smelling like asphalt and sunshine. He wrapped his arms around me from behind while I was cutting limes, his chin resting on my shoulder. "They invited me to talk at a press event next week," he murmured. "Not about basketball, about life, about being honest." I froze, knife still in my hand. "Are you sure?" "Yeah," he said. "I don't want to hide anymore. I'm done hiding." I turned to face him, my chest tight with something like fear, but also something like hope. "Marcus, if you do this, there's no going back. Not ever." He brushed a strand of hair from my forehead, his eyes steady. Good, because I don't want to go back. The day of the event, I waited backstage, palms sweating. Marcus stood just beyond the curtain, taller than everyone else in the room, but his shoulders squared, his jaw set. He stepped up to the microphone, and the crowd went silent. Cameras clicked. The world held its breath. "I've been called a lot of things," he began, his voice clear. "A player, prodigy, a disappointment, a scandal. But the truth is, I'm just a man who loves basketball and who fell in love with someone I wasn't supposed to." A ripple of murmurs ran through the room. Marcus didn't falter. "They told me to sign a paper to erase him from my life, to erase myself. I couldn't do it. I won't do it, because the game means nothing if I can't play it as me, as all of me." For a moment there was silence, then a single clap, then another, then the room filled with applause. Not everyone, not even most, but enough. Enough to drown out the hate for one moment. Marcus stepped back, exhaling like he'd been holding his breath for months. He turned his head, found me backstage, and smiled. And in that moment, I knew, no matter what happened next, we'd already won something. That night, we walked home through the city streets. No disguises, no hiding. People stared. Some sneered. Some nodded. But Marcus held my hand anyway, his fingers laced with mine like a quiet rebellion. "You were amazing up there," I said. He chuckled. "My hands were shaking so bad. I thought I dropped the mic." "You didn't," I said. "You told the truth." He squeezed my hand. "We told the truth." For the first time in months, the city didn't feel like a battlefield. Felt like home. The next few weeks were a strange kind of limbo. Some sponsors still walked away. Some fans still booed. But others started showing up at his games. Kids he'd coached, parents he'd helped. The league reinstated him quietly, almost begrudgingly. But it didn't matter. He wasn't playing for them anymore. He was playing for himself. For us. I started to rebuild my bar too. People trickled back. Not for the miracle elixir, but for something real, for connection, for a story that wasn't just a gimmick. And Marcus? He came every night he could, sometimes after practice, sometimes after games, always with that same quiet determination. We weren't a secret anymore. We were just us. One night, months after the press conference, he showed up at the bar after closing time. He leaned on the counter, grinning like a man with a plan. "I have something for you," he said. I raised an eyebrow. "Another contract you're refusing to sign?" He laughed, pulling something from his bag. It was a basketball, worn and scuffed, covered in signatures. "What is this?" I asked. "Every kid we've played with this summer," he said softly. "They all signed it. They said it's for Coach Marcus and his bartender." I blinked, my throat tightening. "Marcus!" He stepped around the counter, took my face in his hands, and kissed me. Not desperate, not fearful, just sure. "This is our life now," he murmured against my lips. "Not the arena, not the cameras. This, you and me, building something new." And in that moment, I believed him. For the first time, I saw a future that wasn't built on lies or hiding or fear. A future built on us. We stayed on that rooftop court sometimes after dark, playing until the city lights blurred into stars. He'd shoot. I'd cheer. Sometimes I'd shoot and miss terribly, and he'd double over laughing, then pull me into a kiss that tasted like sweat and hope. The world outside still had its claws. It always would. But here, in our little piece of sky, we were free. And that freedom, messy, imperfect, hard one, was more intoxicating than any cocktail I'd ever made. The trial was supposed to destroy us. That's what everyone whispered as we walked into the courthouse. side by side but with the weight of a nation pressing down on our shoulders. Cameras flashed, headlines screamed about betrayal, addiction, and shame. But all I could feel was his hand brushing against mine, a silent promise that no matter what verdict was handed down, we would walk out of there together. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Lawyers bickered, the judge's gavel struck like thunder, and the prosecution painted me as a manipulator who had seduced America's basketball hero with a cocktail laced in lies. Every word was meant to strip me down, to make me seem like nothing but a parasite feeding on his fame. But when it was his turn to speak, the entire room shifted. Jason stood tall, his voice steady though his eyes glistened. "I wasn't addicted to his drink," he said, pausing long enough for the silence to pierce every soul present. "I was addicted to him, and if that's a crime, then I'll gladly spend my life guilty." A murmur rippled through the court. My heart stopped, then roared alive in my chest. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to breathe. The jury deliberated for hours, but to us, time collapsed into a single fragile thread we clung to. When they finally returned, the verdict was read in a voice that cracked the dam of fear inside me. Not guilty. Relief crashed over me so violently I nearly fell, but Jason caught me, his arms strong and unshaken even as the world watched. The crowd outside erupted, half in cheers, half in outrage. Yet in that moment none of it mattered. All I saw was him, the man who had fought for me when it would have been easier to let go. We left the courthouse hand in hand, reporters swarming, microphones thrust forward, questions hurled like stones. Jason stopped, pulled me close, and kissed me in front of everyone. It wasn't planned. It wasn't calculated. It was raw, defiant, and breathtaking. The flashbulbs immortalized the moment, turning what they meant to shame us into an image of love the world couldn't ignore. Of course, the fight wasn't over. Sponsors dropped Jason. Bars stopped carrying my drinks. Strangers spat cruel words online. But for every door slammed shut, another quietly opened. Underground venues invited me to craft cocktails for crowds that wanted more than alcohol. They wanted stories, connection, truth. Jason, banned from his old team, started training kids at a community center. He found joy in teaching them the game without the pressure of fame, reminding himself why he ever picked up a basketball in the first place. There were nights we cried, nights we fought, nights when the weight of the world almost convinced us we couldn't last. But every morning, we woke up in the same bed, our fingers intertwined, our hearts stubborn enough to believe in something bigger than fear. One evening, nearly a year later, Jason brought me back to that same basketball court where we first confessed the truth neither of us wanted to admit. The sun was low, painting the sky in fire. He set down a duffel bag, pulled out a ball, and started to dribble, just like old times. "You know what I miss?" he said, his grin boyish again. "Hearing you yell at me from the stands when I messed up." I laughed, walking closer. "I never yelled. I just gave constructive criticism loudly." He chuckled, then tossed me the ball. "Your turn." I caught it clumsily, nearly dropping it, and he laughed so hard I wanted to throw it at him. But then he came closer, wrapped his arms around me, and guided my hands. Together we took a shot. It missed, of course, but when his lips brushed my ear, whispering, "Doesn't matter. You're still my best win," I realized I had already scored the only basket that mattered. The world didn't stop judging us. It never truly does. But somewhere along the line, we stopped caring. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were living, loving, building a life out of the ashes they thought would bury us. And every time he laced his fingers through mine, I remembered the boy who had once sold a cocktail as a miracle, only to discover that love, real, messy, imperfect love, was the only miracle he needed. We were no longer defined by addiction, scandal, or shame. We were defined by us, and that was more intoxicating than anything I could ever pour into a glass. forever addicted not to the drink, not to the fame, but to each other. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.